It's now time for Energy Insights, where you get an inside view and local perspective of all the oil and gas progress going on in the Mid-Ohio Valley. This program is brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association and can be heard every Saturday at 9 a.m. on WMOA AM 1490, FM 101.3, JAWS Country FM 100.9, and ESPN Radio AM 630 and FM 92.9. Here's Johnny Wharf, your local host.
Energy Insights on a Saturday morning. George Brown, the Executive Director of the Ohio Oil and Gas Energy Education Program, and better known, or sometimes known, I should say, as WJAW. But right off the bat, George, maybe for our listeners, just a little bit about you, and you hit the ground running right out of a pandemic, and how's it going?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here today, and really excited to talk about our programs with you, and have appreciated the opportunities that you've allowed through your station to talk about what's going on in the oil and gas industry. I am the semi-new executive director of the Ohio Oil and Gas Energy Education Program, or WJAW as it's known as. Little my background: born and raised in Eastern Ohio, up in the Warren, Youngstown area. Spent some time working for a couple of our federal elected officials, Senator Voinovich and Senator Portman. After that, did a lot of regulatory and state government affairs work in the financial services industry, and most recently spent 4 years working on regulatory and small business issues in Washington, D.C., at a couple of federal agencies out there. So excited to be back in Ohio, and really excited about the opportunity to lead an excellent organization that we run in the programs that WJAW offers across the state and the mission of our organization.
That regulatory stuff just never goes away, does it?
It doesn't, and it's really a critical time in the oil and gas world today, more than ever, because of some of those regulatory and legislative conversations that are changing the tone of the environment from Washington, and that are having a very serious impact on the economy and what's happening in Ohio today. So it's a helpful background, and I think very useful, just given the situation of where oil and gas is right now.
Well, also, let's talk about, if you're a Youngstown guy, and I think you're a Penguin too, right? Youngstown State?
Yes, sir. Go Penguins.
So let's talk a little bit about what the industry, even of the college. I mean, we had Jim Tressel come down and speak to us at a Shale Crescent event, and to think about the transition of some of that curriculum as it relates to what's going on particularly in our region right now.
No doubt about it, and that's what's really exciting to me about this role and this opportunity in our organization, and really what oil and gas means to Ohio is, having grown up in the Mahoning Valley. Manufacturing, building, and making things is in our blood. Right. I'm the son of a steel worker, and there's no secret that the industry in manufacturing across Eastern Ohio hit some hard times. But because of oil and gas, it's seen a rejuvenation, and you're seeing local economies come back to life. Steel mills in Youngstown and up and down the river coming back online because of energy, because of oil and gas. So that's why I'm so excited to be in this role. I've seen the impact the industry has played firsthand in bringing communities back, and that's still happening in Ohio, and I'm excited to help tell that story.
We'll talk a little bit more about it in the coming weeks, but an opportunity you had, I think, to go on a field trip with some teachers, and then I brought up Tressel, and I think about how important it is to get some of this information or into the curriculum because of all the opportunities that not only are here now, but what we would anticipate to keep growing, right?
100% correct, and that's a core mission of our organization. We specialize in education and workforce development, and that means a couple of things. One, it's getting into classrooms, K through 12 education, providing STEM curriculum and workshops for teachers and students so that they can learn and understand not just the history and what's happening with oil and gas in Ohio, but the science that goes behind it. We help teach that. And then as that develops down the road, we've developed workforce curriculum and job opportunities and positions. So if you're looking to get a job in the industry, we've set out over 75 different career paths that you can look at and where you would want to go to get that certificate or that degree. And another unique aspect we offer is our scholarship program. So if you're taking that next step, you're getting, again, some type of certification. Could be a 2-year degree, could be a 4-year degree, could be a welding certificate, anything along those lines. We as an organization offer scholarship funds to students who are getting that career training in Ohio.
So if we break down UJI, who is the target customer or the target person that you are trying to educate? It's probably everybody, right?
It is, and thanks for having me on this morning. Yeah. Our mission is to educate Ohioans about oil and gas. That is what we wake up and do every single day. We do that in a number of different ways, but at the end of the day, all Ohioans are our target audience to make sure they know what's happening oil and natural gas related in the state.
I love the opportunity that we had here recently to talk to some of the teachers on this field trip, and we've alluded to it, and over the coming weeks we'll talk to you and also bring in some of these interviews from our on-site interviews. We were at Deep Rock, but maybe for the listeners, from your perspective, somebody in the business, talk a little bit about that field trip and what exactly it was that you were trying to accomplish. That seems like you did.
It was an excellent opportunity to bring educators from all corners of the state here to Washington County and show them firsthand what the oil and gas industry is all about. Our organization, a core component of what we do is workforce education and career curriculum development, and part of that is bringing STEM and geology education into K through 12 classrooms. We put on a workshop for teachers, again, from all over the state that the industry provides financial support, so it's free to teachers to be able to take. We give them the curriculum, we give them classroom materials to take back. We give them lesson plans and teach them the science behind oil and gas. So we spend a day in our offices in Central Ohio teaching them that, and then we take the teachers out into the field so they can see what they did on paper firsthand. And we had an excellent opportunity to take over a dozen teachers, again, from all across Ohio, bring them here to Washington County and show them firsthand what's happening in oil and gas.
Yeah, I think about the girls, they're ladies, girls to me, I guess, the young teachers that we talked to, and the energy. This was the end of the day, George, so it was a hot day, yet they seemed energized by what they'd learned. And maybe they were, a couple of them were like, I didn't know this, now I do, I'm going to pass it on, right?
And it's inspiring to see the teachers go through it because, again, think about the educators that are not from Eastern Ohio. So production isn't an everyday occurrence for them. They're from Northwest or Southwest Ohio where there aren't oil wells producing. Right. But they spent time coming here to learn what's happening. They were very passionate about it, asked incredibly great questions to industry professionals, and now they're going to take that knowledge back when they're teaching science in their K through 12 classrooms. It's really a unique program that our organization runs, where it's the first of its kind in the nation. Actually, other states have come to us and we've helped them set up programs similar for classroom education. And it's really an important way to make sure students, as they're growing and developing their minds, it's allowing them to understand the everyday uses that oil and gas plays in their lives, but it also gives them ideas for career paths down the road as well.
I think it says a lot, too, that you had folks in the industry open their doors to say, come on in and let me show you what's going on here. Is that just because there is a hunger for letting people know what's going on here?
It's a couple of things. One, it's an incredible passion that people who work every day in the industry have, and the pride that they have in the work that they do. Very proud folks. It's not easy work, but it's very rewarding, and they understand that if you're working in oil and gas, you're helping people live their everyday lives. So they're proud to help show that off. And it's also an important time in the oil and natural gas world right now, because there are misconceptions that are being filtrated out into the public, and the ability that there are folks that are so proud here in Washington County to showcase the good work that they do also helps to combat the misinformation that's out there.
Brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. With us is George Brown, the Executive Director of the Oil and Gas Energy Education Program. We've had an opportunity over the weeks to get to know George a little bit so we can dig a little bit deeper. I'm curious about your clientele as it relates to the synergy between what we might call big oil, like the big oil and gas companies, and then the mom pops or the family-owned operations we see of so many around, our area in Marietta.
Yeah, and that's really the unique thing happening across Washington County and Eastern Ohio. You have what we call the conventional oil producers, as you referenced, the mom and pop, the family-owned legacy companies that have been around in this area for a long time. And then you do have the shale producers who are, in the grand scheme of things, still relatively new to Ohio that we've seen over the past decade or so. And it's been a unique synergy in the industry in the state. What's unique about our organization is we help support both, and we work collaboratively with both. So on our board of directors, which we call our operating committee, we have a mixture of both. It's half and half. The smaller conventional producers and the shale producers. And that helps provide a diverse voice at the table as we're thinking through the strategy for our organization, and then helping to inform the public about natural gas and oil in the state. And the unique thing is with both, you get a real good cross-section of geographic diversity across the state of Ohio when you mix in the conventional players in addition to the shale players. And then if you think about more regionally, geographically in Ohio, how really plugged in and the heart of it all we are when it comes to oil production. You have Marathon and the refinery capacity in Northwest Ohio. You have a lot of research happening in Central Ohio, manufacturing in Northeast Ohio and Southwest Ohio, a lot of pipeline infrastructure. We really do it all when it comes to oil and gas in the state, and our organization is proud to be a convener of all of those players to, again, help inform the public of what natural gas and oil means in Ohio.
So where would you see it? George Brown's the executive director of WJAW, the Ohio Oil and Gas Education Program. We were real high on the Marcellus and Utica, and then it kind of dropped off. And we always say how many white trucks we see running down the road, and we can't sit here and say what's going to happen. But is there, as you sit at that boardroom table, you've got to anticipate, where we're headed. Do you have a feel at all for that, or?
I do. I feel good. Part of that is coming out of COVID, and who could have ever seen that coming? If you put yourself in a pre-COVID mindset, the industry was very forward-thinking and excited about the future. COVID, as you know, there isn't an industry that it did not set back, including oil and gas, because it's commodity-driven. At a certain point, oil prices were below zero, if you recall, last year. The one thing to remember, though, is oil and gas never went away, even during COVID. When folks were working from home all summer to keep the power on, we're still producing. To keep the trucks moving, to keep Amazon packages delivered, it all required natural gas and oil. So while that may have dropped only because of demand, remember, folks still went out every day and produced that essential Ohio energy that was critical to get us through COVID, not just to make sure we were comfortable in our lives and kept the lights on, but imagine the PPP, the other safety products that were plastic-based, and that is all a byproduct of materials that come from energy production, oil and gas. And that's why we're focused on, like I said, the essential Ohio energy component, to remind Ohioans that there isn't a product you have that you would not be able to have without natural gas and oil. So when there are conversations happening, people saying we need to stop producing, stop drilling, well, that means these everyday products, your iPhones, your computers, your stretchy pants that we all loved this last year, all of that goes away because those could not be manufactured without natural gas and oil.
In studio with George Brown, who's the executive director of WJAW, which is the Ohio Oil and Gas Energy Education Program. You said you spent some time in the Voinovich camp, in the camp, his administration. I know he loved the question when I would meet with him on the Hill as to what are your priorities right now. So can you touch a little bit as it relates to WJAW, some of the initiatives that you guys have that you're really focused on a day-to-day?
Absolutely, and good morning, and thanks again for having me on. I love spending Saturday mornings chatting with you and appreciate the time. So our organization, as you know, is focused on public education and educating Ohioans about natural gas and oil. And it's a critical time in our industry because there is a lot of misinformation that has been sparked out there more recently. The conversations are changing from Washington, and that's influencing public opinion. So our number one priority is to make sure that Ohioans know that natural gas and oil is essential to their everyday lives. And we call that our Essential Ohio Energy campaign. You can learn more at essentialohioenergy.com. But it's a critical time for us to be telling the story that your everyday life would not be possible but for natural gas and oil that's being produced right here in Ohio. And remember, if we're not making it here in Ohio and safely harnessing these natural resources in America, that means one of two things. Number one, we're turning back the clock to go back to the dark ages. And that means there's no radio, there are no iPhones, there are no stretchy Lululemon pants. Or number two, which is realistic, it means we're going to be reliant on hostile foreign actors like China, Russia, the Middle East for our energy and for our manufacturing. And when I go around talking to Ohioans, there's not one person who wants to make that trade-off to be more dependent on China. They'd rather produce it here in Eastern Ohio. And that's the role of our organization, is to make sure that Ohioans are aware of what the industry means to the state and how it lets Ohioans lead their everyday life. They may not think of it every day, but they sure would notice it if it were gone.
Will you extend your outreach to Capitol Hill, or are you focused mostly at a state level? And I guess I'm talking more, and maybe it's the Ooga-Suga groups that are doing the lobbying, but I assume you've got to do some of that as well. Yeah,
so we work closely with our industry partners like Suga and the association Ooga. Since we're a nonprofit organization, we're prohibited from lobbying or weighing in on legislation. What we do is educate, and we are ramping up our efforts to educate members of Congress and other local leaders, elected leaders, so they know what the impact is. In Ohio, oil and gas over the past decade has injected $90 billion with a B dollars into the state. There are over 210,000 Ohioans with direct employment in the Ohio oil and gas industry. So it's important for us to make sure that as policymakers are engaging in conversations, they know what that impact is going to be in Ohio if things change.
Tell me a little bit about your staff, folks maybe that were there when, that have been there, and I've talked to several of them, but a little bit about your staff and what they might do on a regular, on a day-to-day.
We have an amazing team in the office that's supporting the industry and our mission. We're a lean and mean team. There are 4 of us. So in addition to myself, have Sean, Ann, and Kat. Sean Toy runs our education programs.
I know Sean.
Yeah, she's been on the show before, and she's great. And she just worked real hard here recently with our teacher workshops and bringing teachers to Washington County. Kat Watkins helps out, and she's really taking a lead on our firefighter training program. That is another important piece of what we do. We train firefighters on oil and gas so they can keep communities safe. And then we have Ann, who does a lot of our communications and creative services, graphic design, helps make sure that we're putting the right message out. So really, really thankful of Ann Atkins and her efforts and the entire team that we have.
So cool, and I've had the opportunity to go to some of the symposiums or seminars and the different things that they do to see how some of these programs work when you're training a firefighter, whether it be at a site or in the field or whatever the case might be. So are those coming back? I mean,
They are, and we are really proud of the fire training program. Again, it's a first of its kind, industry leading program that's been happening for a long time with the organization. Those programs and those courses are being relaunched. We're working on a virtual digital component, so firefighters can take them from the comfort of the firehouse, wherever that may be in Ohio. And then we have a great partnership in Wayne County in the Worcester area, Northeast Ohio, where we're able to bring them out and go over some live demonstrations that can help them get hands-on training as well. So it's a hybrid, virtual, in-person training with the firefighters that we're super proud of and going to have a commitment to as well.
You got to have radio background. Tell me you have radio background. Nobody holds a mic and projects like that unless they've been down the road.
I have been told I have a face for radio.
You and me both.
Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
George Brown is the Executive Director of the Ohio Oil and Gas Energy Education Program, brought to you each and every Saturday by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association.
Thank you for listening to Energy Insights, brought to you by the Southeastern Ohio Oil and Gas Association. Tune in every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on WMOA Local Radio, JAWS Country, and ESPN Radio, as Johnny Wharf brings you your local and inside perspectives going on in the oil and gas industry right here in the Mid-Ohio Valley.